The Opportunity Part 2. Then Elise would disappear into her room and, it seemed to Mrs. Wilson, into the dark continent of adolescence. There was an Amherst and a Williams pennant over her bed, but the other walls were covered with photographs that she had cut out of Life magazine. This gallery depressed Mrs. Wilson. If the pictures had made any sense, or if there had been any connection between one picture and another, she wouldn't have minded so much. But the pictures had been chosen indiscriminately, or along mysterious lines of discrimination. Overlapping a portrait of a Doberman Pinscher was a picture of some Chinese refugees walking along a bank of the Yangtze River. Next to these was a picture of the casino at Nice, Rex Varney, a wedding in Chicago, the damage done by a tornado in Oklahoma, and the coronation of a chief in Africa. Late in August, the Cogswells had a large cocktail party, and Elise stayed late at their apartment that day. At 7 o'clock, she took the children into the living room to say good night to their parents and the guests, and when she had returned with them to the nursery, she thought she heard herself being discussed by one of the guests. Elise was changing the baby's diaper when Mrs. Cogswell came into the nursery and said that one of the guests was a theatrical agent and that she wanted to talk with Elise. Mrs. Cogswell was very excited at this turn of events, but Elise finished folding and pinning the diaper before she spoke. "All right," she said. She returned to the living room with Mrs. Cogswell and was introduced to Gloria Hagel, the agent. The party was breaking up. Miss Hagel drew Elise down beside her on the sofa and stared at her intently. "Darling," she said, "Tom Leary has just written a new play, and the lead is for a girl of about your age, and they've been trying to cast it all summer, and they haven't been able to find anyone. Anyone! I know what they want. I've talked with Tommy, and the minute I saw you walk into this room, I knew you were it. Now, have you ever thought of going on the stage?" "I've decided that I would," Elise said. "Have you ever had any experience?" "No." "Can you come down to my office tomorrow afternoon?" "You'll have to ask Mrs. Cogswell." "Of course you can," Mrs. Cogswell said. "Isn't this exciting?" Miss Hagel gave Elise her address and made an appointment with her for 3. And after she had left, both the Cogswells told Elise that she was the biggest agent in New York, and they named 6 or 7 movie stars she had handled. Mr. Cogswell mixed another shaker of drinks, and the couple seemed more excited than the girl. When Elise's work was finished, she walked home slowly and told her mother the news. "I may have a job, Ma," she said. "That's nice," Mrs. Wilson said. "Babysitting?" "On the stage," Elise said. "Now you've got to get this idea of going on the stage out of your head," Mrs. Wilson said. "But this agent said that she thought she could get me a part," Elise said quietly. "I didn't ask her. She asked me. Her name is Gloria Hagel. She's kind of funny looking. She was at the Cogswells. I'm going to see her tomorrow." "Well, there's nothing to get excited about, is there?" Mrs. Wilson said. "I'm not excited," Elise said. For her interview with Miss Hagel, Elise dressed, as she dressed for everything, in a long, voluminous skirt and a pair of worn ballet slippers. She put on all her silver bracelets, and if it had been raining, she would have put on her head a scarf that had "Elise, Elise, Elise, Elise" written on it. It wasn't raining. It was a hot day at the end of summer. One of Elise's many physical gifts was that she could appear cool, even in the most sustained heat. When she came into Miss Hagel's office that afternoon, she looked composed and fresh. Miss Hagel was wearing a hat and talking on the telephone. She made a broad gesture of welcome to Elise, scowled at the telephone, and nodded for Elise to sit down. She made it clear that Elise stood much higher in her estimation than the person she was talking with. "I know, darling, I know," she kept saying impatiently into the telephone. I know, darling, but I'm busy now, and you'll have to call me later." She slammed the receiver into its cradle and swung around to Elise. "I have the most exciting news for you, darling," she said. "I talked with Harry Belber this morning, and I told him about you, and you're just what they want. I was afraid the fact that you don't have any experience would count against you, but Harry told me that it doesn't make any difference, that Ben Traveler would rather teach a beginner what to do than teach somebody what not to do, and that what they're looking for is the kind of fresh, unspoiled charm you have. They want me to bring you over to the theater this afternoon." She glanced at her watch. "Of course, we can't be sure you're going to get the part, but there's an awfully good chance you will, and this office is 100% behind you. The play is going to be a hit. I know that. It's just what the audience want, and if you get the part, we'll sign a year's contract, and after you've been on Broadway for a year, I'll take you out to the coast. Cigarette?" "No, thank you," Elise said.